but I have found peace with saying, you know what, Eve, you messed up and you're not going to do it again. And you really learned something from this and we're going to move forward. But most people that I work with don't have that reaction. It's like, this is massively embarrassing. There's tears, there's a lot of self-criticism. Um, and I'm still trying to figure out how to navigate that for others to help cultivate that, again, that kind of fine balance between like self-care, giving yourself grace, self-love, and still encouraging high quality work.
I think you just effectively clarified, I think, one of the most challenging things which is, well, how do I have empathy and how do I set effective boundaries at the same time? Another thing I wanted to touch on this, which is this idea of having difficult conversations. And there's a part of me that thinks generationally this is something that's going to be impactful for millennial leaders. I talked to a client yesterday and they were concerned of overwhelming other people and people on their team. There's this sense that I have to take care of you, and I am here to take care of people. And if we look at that too kind of directly, linearly, sometimes that stops us from making decisions that we know are right.
Yes, I mean, I can identify with that hugely. And again, it's this fine line of like, well, someone's my friend and they're going through a hard time, and should I give them the benefit of the doubt because they're going through X, Y, and Z? And it's like, well, but as the executive director of this organization, like X, Y, and Z work isn't getting done. Either because they don't have the right skill set and it's literally just like a matchmaking error, or they do have something else happening in their lives and they're not performing their job the way that they need to be performing it. And I think having those kinds of difficult conversations has been one of the hardest parts for me. And I think it would be really easy to just be like, oh, Eve, you messed this up and because of you that this didn't happen. But I think that life is too complicated for that. And usually there isn't one thing to blame. But if someone's making a mistake with all of the best intentions, that's not a reason to let somebody go. That's a part of growth. That's a learning opportunity. And so it's framing it that way rather than as a failure.
I love that approach.
How can I help others give themselves that grace and forgive themselves and see those mistakes as actually building blocks towards a better performance in the future?
Of how do we show up for people when they do fail? And it is a really embarrassing moment for them. And I think as leaders, one of the things I see that they fail to do is to just be in that space with them, get on the ground with them. And it's not that you want to feel all of the things that they're feeling, right? We don't want to absorb everyone's emotions. And you might not feel that embarrassment. You might not understand what about the situation is so upsetting. But one of the things leaders miss, because we're trying so hard to soothe that person in front of us. We want them to feel better. We want them to know they're a valuable part of our team, that we forget to just be present with them when they're having a hard time. Yeah, when I have those states, the way in which I've learned to cope with it is by telling myself this belongs, and by seeing the emotions as data for me, that I am telling myself something and that is part of my own intelligence of my body. What is your favorite millennial quality about me?
I love how emotionally in tune you are. And I think that there are so many different kind of philosophers in this space right now of well-being and leadership. And this is a very millennial space of thinking about how to cultivate kind of the correct organization and play into people's emotions. And you have taken that over the last few years and done a true deep dive and cultivated it in your life. And I think that's super millennial and super awesome.
Yeah, of course. Let's take the research and make it all about me.
Yeah.
Most millennial thing ever. All right. What's one thing you want to change people's mind on?
Oh, I want people to understand that we can use food as a top solution to the climate crisis, and that doesn't mean that you're sacrificing things. It means that we actually need to diversify what we're eating, and that there's a lot of really amazing food experiences ahead for us.
You could offer one actionable piece of advice to our listeners. What would it be?
I think my actionable piece of advice is the same for leadership as it would be for changing your eating habits, which is one day at a time and be kind to yourself. And again, I think this is about being empathetic, accepting the fact that, yeah, you're going to have to learn some new skills. You're going to have to try some things out. There's going to be some failures. Why don't you try to say, okay, one day a week, you're going to be plant-based and you're just going to do the research on that plant-based meal. And then you can slowly increase kind of your commitment to it as you increase your skills so that you feel confident in doing it. I mean, it's the same thing for leadership. I think it's, allowing yourself the space to fail, but also, like we were saying before, you can't assume, oh, really wish I would have known this. You can't know it until you live it and until you try it.
I had to pull this one up because it's just too cute.
Oh, yeah, that's my favorite photo.
Who would have thought? Who would have thought these two little cuties would be, one being an amazing leader and client activist, and the other one trying to start a podcast.